Good morning. Welcome to our Bible study on John's Gospel. We are in chapter 18. Jesus on trial now before the high priests Annas and Caiaphas. As we get started, we'll use Psalm number 70 as our opening prayer. In our Psalter book, it's page 354. I'm going to read these words of description first. The church sings Psalm 70 in times of urgent need. It's the middle in a series of three. This psalm lends its first verse to the beginning of an intercessory prayer in many liturgies. Psalm 40, verses 13 through 17, is a parallel passage. Martin Luther said, Psalm 70 is a prayer passage against the enemies who persecute Christians on account of the word of God. They attempt to take away the lives of godly people with both word and action. This is also a prayer of Christ against his enemies, with petitions for both himself and his believers. So this will fit with Jesus on what we can picture him thinking or saying as he is on trial here before the high priest. I'll read the first line. Y'all can respond with the indented line. Again, Psalm number 70 in page 354 in our Psalter. Hasten, O God, to save me. Come quickly, Lord, to help me. May those who want to take my life be put to shame and confusion. May all who desire my ruin be turned back in disgrace. May those who say to me, Aha, aha, turn back because of their shame. That may all who seek you rejoice and be glad in you. May those who long for your saving help always say, the Lord is great. But as for me, I am poor and needy. Come quickly to me, O God. You are my help and my deliverer. Lord, do not delay. And we pray. Lord God, we rejoice in your great love for us. In your mercy, hasten to our aid when we cry to you for help. Turn away those who would see us fail, and grant us confidence in you, through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. All right. Yes, Sally.
Pastor, do you have a room? I would like to sweep out in the front here if there's some, like outside.
Oh, yeah, in the closet beside the drinking fountain.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. That collects a little bit of washed away dirt from the gutters right there, kind of like a little pool. But anyway, thank you everyone for joining us today. As we have Jesus on trial now, last week we had Jesus arrested, betrayed by Judas and Peter, who had boasted, I will never deny you, I'll never abandon you, I'll even die rather than abandon you. Pulls his sword out, right, and he's going to defend Jesus, but then like the other disciples, like the other disciples, abandoned Jesus, and he is led away to Annas and Caiaphas. We're going to have continue here with verse 15, and we'll take the whole section there about Jesus on trial and Peter and another disciple following Jesus. Christine, would you go ahead and read for us, if you don't mind, verses 15 through 18?
Simon Peter and another disciple kept following Jesus. That disciple was known to the high priest, so he went into the high priest's courtyard with Jesus. But Peter stood outside by the door. So the other disciple, the one known to the high priest, went out and talked to the girl watching the door and let Peter in. You are not the one of these men's disciples too, are you? Girl at the door asked Peter. I am not, he said. The servant guards were standing around a fire of coals that they had made because it was cold. While they warmed themselves, Peter was standing with them, warming himself.
Okay, so a little bit of this history as Jesus' prophecy about Peter denying Jesus begins to unfold. And any thoughts as far as the other disciple, we have Peter, and then another disciple. You might know which one that is, at least traditionally. It's generally assumed it was. It was John. Why do you say John? Why do you think that we were led to that conclusion about this other disciple being John? A little bit we've gotten from John's gospel. He only names himself in the list. Sorry, we don't have him in a list even. John never names himself. Talks about the sons of Zebedee, but he also he doesn't use his own name. He and elsewhere is known as the disciple whom Jesus loved. And as he doesn't name himself here, it's that assumption, and would also give us insight into how having these details, or how the writer John had the details of this in a natural way, not just the way of inspiration, but he also was right there, so he writes from that first person's perspective. What do you think about? We can't make too much about it, but it's an interesting note. This disciple John was known by the high priest. We don't really have any other information, but that means that there's some sort of connection, past history, relationship between John and Annas and Caiaphas. Okay, we don't know exactly what that was, but that's mentioned there. And so he gets to go in with Jesus while Peter waits outside. And then the servant girl, he goes and notices Peter as John gets permission for him to come in. And Peter just blatantly comes up with that lie. No, I'm not. How easy is that for it to roll off the tongue, right? Easy for anybody. For Peter, right? You can think of examples, right? Not proud to say when it was just a quick innocent question and somebody asks, and maybe it's even just a conversation on the telephone, right? I don't want to admit that what I was doing or where I was, something in it. Maybe I was just being lazy, but I just come. Oh, I just left my office. Right? Rather than saying, oh, I was just watching TV. How easy to just protect ourselves with a quick little lie, and it rolls off the tongue. And I found that when I have to recognize I've done that, well, then another lie gets compounded so often, right? But so how easy. Why do you think, I guess, well, obviously with inspiration. One of my thoughts here was John including this. And he includes it for a warning, but I think I've started to realize, was John including himself as a little bit of a repentant thought here? What do you think about John bringing Peter into this situation? It wasn't wise for Peter to go in there in that courtyard, right? If he already trips up with a question by the servant girl. Maybe John should have just said, Peter, I think we should stay away, right? So maybe it's that recognition that we can take, and I kind of take too, that I don't think Peter's the only one who let Jesus down here. John let Jesus down by bringing Peter into that temptation situation. Well, it isn't our job as Christians to help each other avoid temptation as well? So just a few thoughts there as we have that. Any questions for me on that first denial of Peter denying Jesus?
When you stated how easy it is to lie, but how hard it is to tell the truth.
Yeah. Why do you say it's hard to tell the truth?
Sometimes we protect ourselves, as you said, as a way of protecting ourselves. And sometimes the truth is too true for us to admit for protection.
Yeah, truth so often opens up our failures, doesn't it? And when truth can open up our failures, that's when it will. It's so much easier to just tell a lie, we think. Yeah. Any other thoughts on that?
There's consequences anytime.
Yeah. When we open up our failures, there are consequences. So we think, let me avoid the consequences with a lie. That's one of the lies of the devil, isn't it? You avoid consequences by telling a lie. You're actually probably opening up the door for deeper consequences, right? So as yeah, Sally.
I was gonna say, I used to work for a Jewish doctor, and I was an ophthalmologist, and he was a ophthalmologist. And we had several different talks, about religion. And so one time I was telling him, that he told me he had never broken any of the commandments, and he was a very, very good person. I mean, he was like very tough, and it's like practically perfect in every way,
Okay.
But I said to him, I said, have you ever told a lie? And he said, no. He said, I never have told a lie. And I said, well, you just did.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's very, very true. How often we wind up even sinning without knowing it. Yeah. So yeah, we have Act 1 or Part 1, and then we have an interlude. With verse 18, servants and guards. It's cold. They're warming themselves, and Peter goes and stands with them. Interesting. Servants and guards who were there to arrest Jesus and now warming themselves in the courtyard. What if Peter recognized any of them? And it would occur to him, maybe one of these guys was in the garden and might have recognized me too. You think they would have noticed the guy trying to cut off, the one who pulled out the sword, the one who cut off the other servant's ear? I think if there are any of the disciples that stood out, Peter would have been the one. But he doesn't catch on.
He will look suspicious if he wouldn't have, because if it's cold, anyone normally would have come to the fire.
Yeah. So yeah. So right, that the whole situation, there wasn't a good place, warming himself by the fire, or a suspicion if he had stayed away. So now Jesus before Annas, and we had a little bit of comments about this last week. Let me just share what's in my notes here. We can discuss it more if you would like, regarding the two high priests, Annas and Caiaphas. The law at Sinai said that there must only be one high priest. And he served for life. Already in David's time, there were competing lines of priests. And in Jesus' time, the high priests were deposed based on politics and bribery, both in the Greek or Hellenistic and in the Roman periods. Not what you want to associate with the temple or church, right? Politics and bribery. But Annas and Caiaphas were both called high priests here. And some factions recognized Annas even during the regime of his son-in-law Caiaphas. We don't know the exact details about why Annas, politics or bribery, was no, the Romans, he fell into disfavor with the Romans for some reason, and so Caiaphas is put in. So just another instance of the human workings of that are all going to go downhill. The human workings of legality really aren't legal, even from the very beginning. We'll definitely see more evidences of that in the next sections. Verses 19 through 24, unless you have any questions about two high priests. All right, Sally, would you mind reading that whole section, Jesus before Annas, of 19 through 24?
The high priest questioned Jesus about his disciples and his teaching. Jesus answered him, I have spoken openly to the world. I always taught in a synagogue or at the temple, where all the Jews gathered. I said nothing in secret. Why are you questioning me? Ask those who heard what I told them. Look, they know what I said. When he said this, one of the guards standing there hit Jesus in the face. Is that how you answer the high priest? He demanded. If I said something wrong, Jesus answered, testify about what was wrong. But if I was right, why did you hit me? Then Annas
Yes.
Sent him bound to Caiaphas the high priest.
Thank you. So a lot going on. What exactly do you think would have been the content of this questioning of Jesus here in verse 19? What's Annas trying to do?
Trying to trip him up.
Trip him up. Or what would he get? What would be a trip up that Annas was looking for?
Trying to get him to admit, yes, I am the Son of God.
Okay, if he admits he's the Son of God, so get him to fall into blasphemy. What else might he be looking for?
Something to use against him.
Something to use. And give me some examples about some other things that they might be able to use against him.
Blasphemy.
Blasphemy is the main one as a priest. So that as the
False teachings.
false teaching, yeah, and so I'm really getting he's going probably even for the Roman way too, right? What was the accusation in front of the Romans? Insurrection or rebellion. So I'm sure if he wouldn't have minded getting a little bit of an admission about rebellion or insurrection there. What are you teaching? Tell me your teachings. Why are these disciples following you? What's their intent? What's your intent? This is the interview room. But it actually, you can think of the cops asking those questions or the police officers asking those questions of a suspect. And in our day and age, the suspect, what does he have that he can do in order to end the questioning, avoid implicating him? Yeah. Give me a lawyer, right? Give me a lawyer.
I plead the fifth.
I plead, and in effect, when Jesus answered him, all the questionings, Jesus was pleading that day's the Fifth Amendment, right? I'm not going to incriminate myself. Wise answer that at the ready. I've spoken openly. I'm not going to tell you again what I've said because the people who listened to me heard me clearly. Ask them. If you want a witness to testify against me, I'm sure you can ask the people who heard me. If you want a witness, just ask them. I'm not going to incriminate myself here at this time, at least not at this trial. It's in the middle of the night. There are a number of Jewish laws already broken. Not supposed to have a trial at night. It's supposed to be at least a day difference between the arrest and the trial. Right? But this is all very, very rushed.
So you're supposed to have your accusers first before they start this. The accusers are supposed to come in and state what the offense is.
Yeah, so you're not having a fishing trip, right? This is a pre-trial conversation, and then in an actual trial, you have the accusers come and make the accusation and the evidence before the defendant has the opportunity to speak and defend themselves.
There's not a prosecution either. The prosecution is Annas.
Yeah, the prosecution in both occurrences is the actual judge, the high priest, Annas and Caiaphas. So they did not have a fair or a legal trial in mind. They were just looking for a pretext to get rid of him. The epitome of a kangaroo court, as it were, right? And it's already decided. And questions or other comments? I guess we didn't even, the one guard who heard Jesus reply, ask the people who heard me. What did the guard do? Hit him, right? First of a number of hits. And is that how you answer the high priest? And Jesus doesn't get mad, doesn't hit back. In effect, he's put into practice turning the other cheek, but he asked the question, right? If I said something wrong, tell me what I said wrong, right? If not, then ask yourself, why did you hit me? And I think verse 24, there's a little bit more behind verse 24. Annas sent him still bound to Caiaphas, the high priest. Ever have that situation going nowhere fast? So let's send him somewhere else, right? Jesus, Annas wasn't getting the evidence or the trip ups that he was hoping for in the pretrial.
Well, like in verse 19, it says, they questioned him about his disciples and his teaching. But he was seeking more than just that information.
Yeah.
And so therefore, building the case against him without having any evidence to build it upon.
Yeah, he was looking for evidence, and the evidence was going to be his own words. And anything else here on Jesus and that first high priest trial before the unofficial high priest Annas? All right, we're gonna jump back to Peter in the courtyard. Peter denies again. Kathy, would you mind reading just that section, verses 25 to 27?
Simon Peter continued to stand there, warming himself. So they said to him, "You are not one of his disciples, are you?" He denied it, saying, "I am not." One of the servants of the high priest, a relative of the man whose ear Peter had cut off, said, Didn't I see you with him in the garden?" Peter denied it again, and just then a rooster crowed.
Okay, yeah. And from the other gospel writers, we have a few other points that you may think of that are there, and you can mention them as if you would like, and kind of good to think through what they are, and recognize so many movies and things that come out about Jesus and the trial and this important day, and so often the writers add things just to make the story a little neater, but here we would have just want to just, if you have those comments, and just make sure that they are the things that actually did happen. Peter there warming himself again, going back to where he was before, or where we were before that section about Annas, and the first question: you're not one of his disciples too, are you? So this question. What do you think? What do you think is the intent of the person asking the question? What did Peter think the intent would have been? Yeah, it's force you into a corner. We got one person on trial. Let's see if we can get another person on trial, right? So that he's asking, he's giving him the out. You're not, are you? Right? The other gospel writers indicate that the people there with him, Peter would have had, apparently was talking because he's Galilean. His accent gave him away. Someone else had said that, but here the servants, relative of Malchus, would have recognized and remembered. You cut off my cousin's ear. I remember who had the sword in his hand. Right? Not that it is just a relative. We don't know it was a cousin. But I didn't I see you there in the garden? And Peter denied it again. The third time from the other gospel writers, what else did Peter add to his "I did not"? I don't know the man. I don't know the man. He cursed. He swore an oath and called down curses on himself if he was telling a lie. So his lies deepened there as he got into it. Had to try to dig himself out of a hole, but you can't dig yourself out of a hole by going down. So and then the rooster crowed. That third denial and the rooster. What else do we know from the other gospel writers when that rooster crowed this time?
Peter went away and cried.
Yeah, well, he wept bitter. He went, just can just picture, the all of the emotion of Jesus' sadness that we covered in that upper room, and Jesus' prophecy, and Peter's bold, "I'm going to stand with you," and it all just comes crashing down. He's helpless, right? and his mistakes. He's helpless because he's weak. And he really has nothing else to do other than just cry. He's in that desperate position. Real men don't cry, right? Yeah, right. We do when we recognize how weak we are, and so that's something that Peter definitely realized when we make mistakes and own up to them. Yeah, the tears will come too.
One thing I've always thought about here is that he went away and wept. What did Judas do? Judas went away and killed himself.
Judas did, right, wound up killing himself, and Judas had he tried to make his own amends, right, by giving the money back, right, and when that didn't work, weeping is a much better option than Judas's option, right? All right, anything else on that about Peter? Kind of, yeah, leaving Peter there until Easter Sunday, and he's not in a good position for some 36 to 40 hours. He's definitely a man who's in bad shape. So now we actually skip quite a bit here, the whole trial before Caiaphas. And he's led before Caiaphas. From Caiaphas here, John skips that the other gospel writers had shared with us. Really, he doesn't always duplicate what we have in the other three gospels, and here it very much shortens it up. What was the crime for which Caiaphas's court convicted Jesus? Blasphemy. And what Jesus stopped pleading the fifth. He stopped saying, ask others, when the high priest Caiaphas put him under oath and said, in the name of the living God, are you the anointed one? Are you the Messiah? And Jesus answered, yes, I am. That had happened after the false witnesses had come. Jesus had not responded to incriminate himself up till that point, but then they did. Anything else on the trial before the high priests, Annas, Caiaphas? All right. Mark, are you up to read to the bottom of that page? We'll just take that whole section before we turn it, even though it's kind of the middle of a section. So 28 to 31.
Early in the morning, the Jews led Jesus from Caiaphas to the praetorium. They did not enter the praetorium themselves, so that they would not become ceremonially unclean. They wanted to be able to eat the Passover meal. So Pilate went out to them and said, what charge do you bring against this man? They answered him, if this man were not a criminal, we would not have handed him over to you. Pilate told them, take him yourselves and judge him according to your law.
All right. Led from Caiaphas to the praetorium. Praetorium is basically the governor's palace, the area, the governor where he has his judgment seat. Just city hall, but this would have been comparative to our federal courthouse there. Now, how ironic, in my notes there, they were so concerned about the ceremonial laws, ceremonies, the Passover meal and the rules for it. You can't enter a Gentile home or somewhere that would make you unclean, unfit for the Passover. So yeah, they wanted to be able to celebrate that Passover, but ignoring the moral law, right? The moral law about murder, right? Well, we're gonna get this guy who's innocent, and we're gonna have him convicted and put him to death. Just the irony there is just so much that it stands out. Pilate, the governor who serves as judge, what's the charge? It's probably said that many times when they brought a criminal to be on trial. What's the charge? I would guess Pilate did not often hear this response. If you weren't a criminal, wouldn't have brought him. What? A good judge at that time would say, dismissed. Right? We're not going any further if you're not going to present the charges, right? And then, but Pilate doesn't answer that way. He's take him yourselves, judge him according to your law, because they did have that right for judgment up to a certain point, right? Though not to do what they wanted, which was kill him, and that's what we'll see in just a moment. Any questions or comments on this section before we turn the page and move on? Okay, so Jesus before Pilate, and we're going to have that response. Celia, would you like to read? Let's see. And just go ahead.
We don't have that page.
Oh, you don't? Did anybody else have that page?
No,
Nobody has that page. I didn't print that page. Well,
I can't read it.
no, you can't read it. And it's probably small up on the screen, and it's too late for me to print it now. I was sure I printed that one. Well, we'll have to do it for next week. We've only got a few minutes here, and I will increase the font size just a little bit here, if I can. You can read there, Mark. You can catch it up on the screen. Okay.
The Jews said, it is not legal for us to put anyone to death. This happened so that the statement Jesus had spoken indicated what kind of death he was going to die would be fulfilled. Pilate went back into the praetorium and summoned Jesus. He asked him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" Jesus answered, "Are you saying this on your own, or did others tell you about me?" It's getting a little hard.
Yeah, so we'll just go ahead and stop there.
Okay.
So
Just look in the Bible.
yeah, you can have it in your Bible as well if you pull that up. So the Jews said, yeah, we can't judge them by our own law because we can't put anybody to death. And the statement Jesus had spoken, obviously the death, what was the statement about the kind of death he would die? He would be lifted up on a cross. He would be handed over to the Romans and crucified. And very early on, when Jesus spoke, he talked about Moses and the bronze snake, right? Just as Moses lifted up the serpent in the wilderness and put it on a tree, on a stake, that's the kind of death the Son of Man would go through. Because if someone was found blaspheming in Jewish court, what was the manner prescribed for death? Stoning. But Jesus said, "I'm not going to die that way," right? The Roman way was crucifixion. Crucifixion was for the non-Roman citizens. If you were a Roman citizen, you got the honor of being beheaded, much quicker, less painful. Although not a pleasant experience either, I would say, right? So he would be crucified. So Pilate goes in and back to the praetorium. And so interesting, right? Because the Pharisees, the Jewish leaders, want to eat the Passover, Pilate concedes to them, and he has the accusers outside in the courtyard and the accused in the courtroom. And just a big headache for Pilate, right? And you just see, you can just picture Pilate and history. It's not just from the Bible. History actually shows us that Pilate was not not a strong individual, not a good governor. And he is playing the two sides of, of trying to do justice and law and trying to honor Rome and trying to appease the Jews. And he's doing it from a standpoint of weakness, as he's already conceding, well, okay, you don't have to come into the courtroom to actually let the accused face his accusers. Just go ahead and tell me out here. So, are you the king of the Jews? In effect, Pilate's interview. Let's see if we can dig some dirt on him, or get a reason to free him, right? The king of the Jews, Pilate would have been thinking of someone who was leading a rebellion. So Jesus doesn't answer, comes with another question. Is this your evaluation of the evidence? Or are you just going by what other people have said? And you have any evidence for this? And Pilate, well, I'm not supposed to have evidence. I don't go investigate. I don't care who the king of the Jews is, right? It's your own people who handed you over. So tell me what you did. What'd you do? That's the accuser's question, and probably that question would be thrown out in a courtroom. What'd you do? Tell me. Looking at Jesus, I guess we didn't read after verse 34, did we? Right. So I guess we should read. But before we do that, a little bit of I'll read what I have on the notes there. Jewish courts should have stoned Jesus to death, but Jesus was turned over to the Romans, who crucified. Jesus had foretold his death by crucifixion in John 12. That was verses 32 and 33. He had actually specified that manner of death, of execution. All right, we'll keep on going here, even though you don't have the paper, but I guess verse 34, and I'll read so we don't, Kathy, you have it? You want to read? Take verse 34, and as you move down, let's stop with verse 38, okay? Verses 34 through 38.
Okay. Jesus answered, "Are you saying this on your own, or did others tell you about me?" Pilate answered, "Am I a Jew? Your own people and chief priests handed you over to me. What have you done?" Jesus replied, "My kingdom is not of this world. If my kingdom were of this world, my servants would fight so that I would not be handed over to the Jews. But now my kingdom is not from here." "You are a king then?" Pilate asked. Jesus answered, "I am, as you say, a king. For this reason I was born, and for this reason I came into the world, to testify to the truth. Everyone who belongs to the truth listens to my voice." What is truth?
Okay, thank you. And we're stopping in the middle of a verse, but that's okay. We'll have it moving on. That kind of concludes the conversation with a question. So getting back to verse 34, as Jesus answered his question, the fishing expedition with the question, is this coming from you, or did others tell you? And Pilate's trying to deflect, I don't really care about this. Your own people handed you over. Tell me what you did. Looking at Jesus' answer, give me an evaluation of Jesus' answer there. What in effect is Jesus saying in that paragraph, verses 30 with verse 36? Kingdom's not of this world. If my kingdom were of this world, my servants would fight so that I would not be handed over to the Jews, but now my kingdom is not from here. You want to summarize Jesus' answer or explain Jesus' answer to me? You can use my notes if you wanted. That's okay. Oh, I'm sorry, you don't have it on your paper, so you can't read them. So in effect, Jesus is going with Pilate's question, right? Pilate, you're a king, right? What have you done? And you got these subjects, and if you're the king of the Jews, why'd your people hand you over? Well, Jesus is in effect saying, my kingdom, it's not the kind of kingdom you're thinking of. His kingdom, nothing to do with the earthly territory taken from Rome, nothing to do with a neighboring territory from Rome that Rome has its eyes set on. His purpose in coming to earth was totally different. And let me erase that so you see, right? He would tell people the way of truth, which was the only way of salvation, leading people to God's kingdom, the eternal one. The kingdom's not of this world, not where people are going to use swords and defend him. Peter's actions in the garden were misguided and not what Jesus wanted him to do. My kingdom is not from here. So yeah, you're going down the wrong track. I'm not guilty of doing anything breaking your kingdom's laws. But Pilate fixates here in verse 37. You're a king, right? You are a king. All right, so before we go in, any questions on Jesus' first reply, my kingdom's not from here, not of this world? So verse 37, in verse 37, Jesus is going to dig deeper into that. I'm a king. A kingdom's not from here, right? Yes, I am a king. I was born to be a king. And this is the reason, to testify to the truth. Listen to my voice, you're going to know the truth. Pay attention to it. And what that he has that to guide people on the way of salvation, to be a member of God's kingdom. What is truth is Pilate's answer. A question again, right? A question. He's not even looking for an answer, though. He wasn't. This is ask the question and walk away. You're going to tell me about what truth is. He's not going to discuss it. And Romans would have had their fill of mythical gods. They would have had their contradictory claims of ancient philosophers, trying a philosophy of life and whatever. They would have had their fill of all that. We're not going to go and debate this Socrates and Plato and Aristotle and all this stuff going on, because really it's confusing and we're not going to have any decision anyway. So Pilate said, don't go down the road of truth. Like, we can actually know that. Really, so in our day and age, which is known as the postmodern age, postmodernism basically can be summed up by saying we don't know what truth is. There's no way to have any rules that are firm and fixed for everybody. It is all dependent on the circumstances. So that's in effect. Pilate would have been one of the first of those postmoderns, as we could say there. So I just wanted to go to the end of my notes. Any questions or comments through that? As we're almost at our time being up, let me finish up and see, as Pilate asks the question, what is truth? And basically drops the mic and walks away. After he said this, he went out again to the Jews and told them, I find no basis for a charge against him. But you have a custom that I release one prisoner to you at the Passover. So do you want me to release the king of the Jews for you? And they shouted back, not this man, but Barabbas. Now Barabbas was a rebel. So Pilate, he's not looking for truth. He's looking to get out of the situation. He knows he doesn't have a reason to convict Jesus. There's no basis. He tells his accusers that. What should a judge do when there's no basis for the charges? Dismissed, not guilty, set him free. But rather, he's going to rely on the ploy of a custom, right? Passover time, you get to pick a prisoner to be released. So let's just have Jesus be released, and then we don't have to worry about a verdict and a declaration for me. We'll just call it a wash. He actually, Barabbas, one who was a rebel, a murderer, convicted of murder, was going to deserve to die. Many suppose that the cross that Jesus is put on had been Barabbas's cross, Barabbas had been sentenced to that position. But Pilate's taken that little jab, that sarcasm, hoping to end the trial. Oh, the king of the Jews. I'm going to keep calling him the king of the Jews. And maybe that ridicule would let you just back away. So Pilate, in his weakness, misjudged those Jewish leaders as well, and their firm resolve. Questions or comments through here? Yeah, Sally.
Well, that way, Pilate didn't have to take the responsibility.
Yeah.
It wasn't technically.
Yeah, that's what he was trying to avoid responsibility, and so that's definitely what we see Pilate in his weakness.
Something about like where Pilate discussed the situation with his wife. About this.
Yeah, one of the other gospel writers has yeah. Well, actually, we'll have that in just a moment coming up here. That so we don't have that included as we get closer to the end of this trial before Pilate. That we do have his wife's action as well. So let's see that next week. And so as we wrap this up, we know why we use Psalm 70 at the beginning, a crisis prayer. Even Jesus could pray it. And so the first verse of Psalm 70 is our closing prayer for today. Hasten, O God, to save me. Come quickly, Lord, to help me. Amen. Thank you for joining us today.